this is one of the exact reasons why I love month-to-month leases. Hi, it's Kevin Amolsch, Pine Financial Group. We work together so you succeed. Hey, you found us here on YouTube, you found us here on Facebook. Please hit like, hit subscribe, and leave some comments below. We'd love to interact with you. I want to go over the eviction moratorium put out by the CDC earlier this month. I've been reading a lot about it and a lot of headlines with some misinformation. It was a little confusing to me, so I went to the CDC website and I pulled the actual document. It's about 6 pages long. I know you probably can't read that. And I just read through this and I want to point out some misconceptions and go through the moratorium and how it's going to impact us as real estate investors. So first of all, what is a moratorium? Well, the moratorium is specifically, it states in the report, specifically to prevent the spread of COVID-19. There's a lot of detail and a lot of studies and references in the report about how homelessness and homeless shelters and people that have to move in with family and be confined into smaller spaces, how that has potential to spread the virus. So they want to try to slow down the spread by not evicting anybody. It actually kind of makes a little bit of sense, so I agree with it. The problem is that it's us landlords that are going to take on the burden here and not necessarily the government. I don't necessarily agree with that. Okay, so it's going to put a moratorium on evicting your tenants all the way until the end of the year, December 31st, 2020. So who qualifies for this? Which tenants qualify? Pretty much everybody. There's 2 restrictions here. First of all, you need to make your, they say best efforts, you need to make a best effort to get support from the government. So some rental assistance. If you make some effort there and you cannot get the assistance, that's one. The other one is you have to make, as an individual, $99,000 per year or less. If you're joint filer on your tax returns, you can make $198,000 or less. So almost, let's just say, $200,000 for a husband-wife family. And as long as you make that or less, you qualify to not get evicted from your home. I find this very interesting because in this report, it references a study about affordability and what kind of income you need to afford a 2-bedroom home across the country. And what I found most interesting about that is it specifically states in Hawaii, which is the most expensive place to live, it says here in the United States for rent, it says in order to have a 2-bedroom home rental in Hawaii, you need to have an income of $80,621. So assuming you have a 2-income family and you can make $80,000, you can afford a place to live in the most expensive place to live in the entire country. Yet, the CDC wants to put the income cap on tenants that cannot be evicted at almost $200,000. So nowhere in here does it explain why this report is in here about Hawaii and the affordability of rent and how low it is compared to what the cap is on rent in the moratorium. So those are the 2 things a tenant needs to qualify. $200,000 or less, $198,000 to be specific or less, and a best efforts attempt to get some support. Now, what's the process? So how they can prevent the eviction? The process is really simple. All they have to do is send a declaration to the landlord, and that's it. Okay, the declaration states, yes, I qualify. Yes, I understand that rent is still due. I'm going to have to pay rent at some point. Yeah, right, like we're going to ever be able to collect that as a landlord, right? And that they made some effort to get, to get some support. And the declaration also states to the landlord that they will likely go homeless if they get evicted. So all they got to do is sign that, send it to the landlord, boom, eviction stops. Nowhere in the declaration does it require any kind of proof that they've been affected by the COVID pandemic or that they cannot afford the rent. It's simply a signature, and the court is supposed to, or the landlord is supposed to believe the tenant and that the tenant is not lying to them. No proof. Okay, I found that very interesting too. Now, if you go through the eviction court, there's a chance you could get them to prove that they've applied for some support and that kind of thing. But that's rolling the dice a little bit. So I think that that's a little bit unfortunate, a little bit weighted in the tenant's favor. Okay, so landlords, what does this mean for you and how do you protect yourself? Well, first of all, if you get the declaration, or even if you don't get the declaration, and you have a tenant asking you for some support or saying that they've been affected by COVID and that they cannot make their payments, I absolutely agree, and I've put this in other videos, I absolutely agree that you should try to work with your tenants. Maybe defer some of the payments until later, waive late fees, just whatever you can to try to work with them. Especially right now when you can't evict them anyways. I would say get as much as you can from them and try to work with them. And frankly, your tenant will appreciate that. And during this time, it's probably the right thing to do anyway. So number one, I would say try to work with your tenant. Number two, give them some support and references for, the government support, the requirement that they need to do before they qualify for this protection. There's a lot out there. I was going to give you one or two websites to go to try to help you, and I started Googling it, and there's some websites to go check out in the report as well. But honestly, guys, that sent me down a hole that I didn't have time to go swimming in. There's a lot of support out there. If you just simply Google rental assistance, you'll get more than enough, small community nonprofits that are out there to help you. And it does specifically say that HUD is committed to funding this stuff. I know there's a bit of a shortfall, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute, but they are getting funded. These nonprofits are getting funded directly from HUD to help with rental assistance. So I would say work with your tenants, try to help them with the rental assistance, and then I would point out that there's some penalties if they're doing this incorrectly, if they haven't applied or if they really haven't been affected by the COVID pandemic, and maybe they don't qualify for it. The penalties are rather stiff, up to $100,000 and 1 year in jail for basically lying on this declaration. So that's more of a hammer. I would really not want to use that until it was a last resort, but you could simply point out, I read the report, there's some penalties here if you're lying to me and you have the money and you're not paying it, and it can be a year in jail. So maybe that's one thing you could do. And then finally, I've talked about this before as well, this is one of the exact reasons why I love month-to-month leases. If you're on a month-to-month lease with your tenant and your tenant stopped paying you, you can simply evict for the expiration of the lease and not because they didn't make the payment. There's no protection in this moratorium for evicting somebody because their lease is expired. So that's key here and one way to protect yourself. And for the future, I like the month-to-month because it protects landlords. I really believe that. So maybe in the future, consider month-to-month leases with your tenants. Or if you're coming up on a renewal, maybe roll it into a month-to-month in case something like this comes up. Well, who knows? This moratorium might get extended till the end of next year. We don't know that. So let's do what we can to protect ourselves. I want to mention what's this going to do to the market? Who knows? Travis and I just had a conversation today. We're looking at a micro unit development. I'm more nervous than he is about that. I'm not worried about single family homes, townhomes, condos, that kind of thing. Units that someone's going to buy and live in. We are still at a super low inventory. We would have to see in the markets that we're in, we would have to see inventory triple before we can get to a stable market. I don't think an eviction moratorium is going to create that inventory for us, even if we see a slew of evictions in January. What it could do is affect values on apartments though, especially the smaller micro apartments where people aren't wanting to live in those right now. With COVID, what we're seeing is more people wanting bigger homes, more space, more bedrooms. They're working from home. They have their parents living with them. All of the other things that we've talked about before. So I think that we could see some impact in the apartment space with this eviction moratorium. Finally, I want to mention real quick, earlier this week, it was Tuesday, it's actually both the Democrats and Republicans came together, a portion of them came together, and they came up with yet another stimulus bill. They're calling this like the compromise bill. So we know that the HEROES Act and the other one that the Senate came up with, they've been competing with each other and we're making no progress, so we're not seeing any more stimulus, no checks, none of that, right? Well, Congress is committed to working with us now. The Democrats have said we're not going on any vacations, we're not leaving until we get a stimulus bill done. They claim to be committed to getting it done before the election, so this is all fantastic news. We have the compromise bill. Inside the compromise bill, and this just came out, right? So we're going to learn more about this throughout the month. Expected to, if it passes, be around maybe the first week of October. Inside this bill is a $25 billion carve out for rental support. So hopefully this helps with the eviction moratorium and the landlords can continue to get paid. So keep an eye on that. I think that's all I got for you with the eviction moratorium. Pretty sure I understand this correctly. I read the entire report and it came directly from the CDC, not some other articles that I read online. So leave me your comments. Let me know what you think. And check us out at pinefinancialgroup.com.